I want to talk a little bit about what I do for my kids and what I recommend to patients that they can do for their children. First of all, the most important thing is sun protection and sunscreen for kids. Obviously, we really want to protect our kids. We know that being in the sun causes skin cancer, and especially at a young age, getting that kind of exposure can be pretty serious. So one thing I recommend is that people protect their children from being out in the sun, actually keeping them from the sun, or in sun protective clothing from the age of about 0 to 6 months. With my children, I tend to do that a little bit longer, even up to the age of 12 months. Typically, after about 6 months, you can safely put on sunscreens for babies. With young children, it's usually recommended that you use the physical type sunscreens, the blockers like zinc oxide or titanium dioxide. And a lot of kid sunscreens do have those products in them. One that pediatric dermatologists often recommend is Blue Lizard, and that's very effective. It was formulated in Australia, where there's a lot of sun and a high risk of skin cancer. And then there's a lot of companies now that make sun protective clothing, and so there's just all kinds of brands where you can buy long sleeve rash guards for kids and even pants for kids, and that's usually what I recommend for these young infants, where they're going to be outside, with a hat and those kind of outfits where they can stay cool, they still breathe, but they're protected from the sun, and you're not putting chemicals on their skin. For skin products for children, usually I'll recommend things that are fragrance free, so that they avoid a lot of things that that a child might be sensitive to. There are a lot of brands out there that say that they might be for kids, but they don't avoid those things. And so the best thing to do is to look on it to see if it says fragrance free, not necessarily unscented, but it has to be fragrance free, and avoid a lot of those kind of additives and that sort of thing. For skincare for older children above the age of about 1, you can start to transition to other things. Of course, we still choose shade as number 1 protection from sun, and then sun protective clothing is number 2. But then number 3, you can use other types of sunscreens. And there's a lot of tricks to be able to get sunscreens on kids and also to reapply. And so typically with my own children, or what I recommend to other people, is that you start with a lotion that spreads easily and that you can put on the skin, like the arms, the legs, the trunk, and even the neck. And I'll start there with my kids, but for the face, I usually would use the facial sticks because they're much easier to apply. The kids are much more willing to let you do it, and you can do it very quickly. For reapplication, at that point, then I typically will stick to sprays. And because my kids, I can bring them out of the water, I'll make them, a lot of them you can do on wet or dry skin, so I'll spray them off, make them stay out of the water for 5 minutes or so to dry off, and then they can get back in the water right away. Again, the sunscreen stick for the face makes it really easy to reapply, and so that way I can get that reapplication every few hours, because remember, a lot of these sunscreens will degrade in the sun, and so you do need to do a reapplication when kids come out of the water, and also if you're going to be in the sun for long periods of time. As far as other skincare products, again, I do recommend that people stick with the same thing, so you're not switching brands all of the time, because that's safer, that you're not exposing your children to different preservatives and fragrances, and then just keeping it simple, so sticking with those fragrance-free products that are safe. And there are certain name brands of things that I tend to recommend because I just think they work well and they're safe for kids. Cetaphil cream is one of those. It comes in a big pound jar, very easy to use. Also, the CeraVe products are great too.